I'm Clara, 28 female. My husband Liam and I used to live in a world that smelled of instant ramen and stale coffee, in a tiny apartment where you could wash dishes and watch TV at the same time. We were the co-founders of a tech startup that my family referred to as my little computer hobby. For years, my life was measured not by my own happiness or the progress of my work, but by how I stacked up against my older sister, Jessica, a comparison I always lost. This is the story of how my family decided I wasn't successful enough to celebrate with them, and how, just a few weeks later, they were begging for an invitation to a life they never believed I could build. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. For as long as I can remember, I've been the quiet moon to my sister Jessica's blazing sun. She was 2 years older, a lifetime more confident, and effortlessly collected all the praise and attention in our family like a magnet pulling iron filings. She was the one with the perfect grades, the lead in the school play, the captain of the debate team. I was the one in the corner with a book, the one who preferred the company of a keyboard to a crowd, the one my parents affectionately, but tellingly, called their dreamer. My mother, Alina, was the chief architect of this dynamic. To her, success was a ladder, and each rung had a clear, visible label, a prestigious university, a corporate job title, a sensible and wealthy partner. Jessica had climbed that ladder with breathtaking speed. At 30, she was a marketing director for a major firm, drove a luxury sedan, and was engaged to Marcus, an investment banker who ticked every single one of our mother's boxes. They were a power couple, a walking, talking billboard for the life Alina believed was the only one worth living. And then there was me. I went to a state college, not an Ivy League. I didn't take a job at a Fortune 500 company. Instead, I fell in love with coding and with Liam, a man who shared my passion for building something new from nothing. After graduation, while Jessica was climbing the corporate ladder, Liam and I were in our tiny, one-bedroom apartment, building the foundations of ours. We poured our savings, our energy, and every waking hour into creating ConnectSphere, a social integration app designed to help small communities and local groups manage their events and communications more effectively. To us, it was the future. To my family, it was a failure to launch. My mother would call and ask, "When are you going to get a real job, honey? This little project is sweet, but you need benefits. You need a 401k." When I tried to explain the concept of venture capital or user acquisition, her eyes would glaze over. It was simpler to just call it my hobby. Family dinners were the worst. They were always held at a fancy restaurant of Jessica's choosing. Liam and I would show up in our nicest, but still casual, clothes, feeling like children at the adults' table. Jessica would hold court, detailing her latest successful marketing campaign. Marcus would talk about the stock market. My mother would listen, beaming with pride, her gaze flicking to me every so often with a look that was a mixture of pity and confusion. "Clara and Liam are still working on their little app," she would announce to anyone who asked, her tone making it sound like we were building a model airplane in our basement. I tried not to let it bother me. I had Liam. He was my partner in everything. He saw my worth, celebrated my intelligence, and believed in our dream with a ferocity that often carried me through my darkest moments of doubt. We were a team. We'd spend 16 hours a day coding, fueled by cheap pizza and the exhilarating feeling of creation. We were building our own world, brick by digital brick, and in that world we were successful. We were happy. But the gravitational pull of my family's expectations was immense. I still craved their approval, a simple acknowledgement that my path, while different, was valid. I wanted my mother to look at me with the same pride she had for Jessica. I wanted my sister to see me as an equal, not a charity case. The whispers about Jessica's engagement party started about a month before it was scheduled. My aunt called me, gushing about the save-the-date she had received. "It's at the Redwood Manor. Can you believe it? Your sister has such exquisite taste." I smiled and feigned excitement, assuming our own invitation was in the mail. Liam and I had just secured our first round of seed funding, a modest amount, but a massive step forward for us. I couldn't wait to tell them the news at the party, to finally have a tangible piece of success to present. Days turned into a week, then two. Every time I checked the mail, my heart would purr. Form a little leap of hope, only to sink when I found nothing but bills and junk mail. I started to make excuses. Maybe Jessica was sending them out in batches. Maybe she was going to give it to me in person. Maybe, with her busy schedule, she'd simply forgotten. One afternoon, about a week before the event, I was on a video call with my mother. She was showing me the dress she'd bought for the party, a shimmering silver gown that cost more than our monthly rent. "What do you think, Clara? Do you think it's too much?" she asked, twirling in front of her camera. "It's beautiful, Mom. You'll look amazing," I said, my voice a little tighter than I intended. "Oh, I can't wait. Everyone is going to be there. All of Marcus's partners from the firm, Jessica's entire executive team. It's going to be a wonderful networking opportunity, you know." The subtext was as clear as glass. This wasn't just a party, it was a gathering of the elite, a curated collection of people who mattered in her and Jessica's world. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my tone light. "Sounds incredible. I haven't seen our invitation yet. I was getting a little worried it got lost in the mail." There was a flicker of something on my mother's face, a brief, uncomfortable shift before her practiced smile snapped back into place. "Oh, don't be silly," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "Jessica is handling all of that. I'm sure it's on its way." But her hesitation was all the confirmation I needed. The knot in my stomach tightened. I ended the call with a polite excuse, the image of my mother's shimmering dress burned into my mind. I looked around our small apartment, at the whiteboards covered in code, the stacks of technical manuals, the empty coffee cups on our desk. This was our kingdom, the place where we were building our empire. But in the eyes of the people who were supposed to love me most, it was nothing more than a child's playpen. The silence from Jessica wasn't an oversight. It was a message. And as the day of the party drew closer, that message was becoming painfully, deafeningly loud. The days leading up to the engagement party were a special kind of torture. My social media feeds, which were usually a pleasant distraction, became a minefield of reminders. Friends of Jessica, distant cousins, even my own mother, posted about their excitement. There were pictures of their outfits laid out on beds, captions about being so honored to celebrate the happy couple, and location tags for the Redwood Manor that made my phone feel like a hot coal in my hand. Each post was a small, sharp sting, a public declaration that I was on the outside looking in. Liam saw the toll it was taking on me. I grew quiet and withdrawn, the usual spark in my eyes dimmed by a constant, simmering anxiety. He'd find me staring blankly at my laptop, the lines of code a meaningless jumble. "It's a mistake, Clara," he insisted, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I sat at our cluttered desk. "Jessica's a mess with details, you know that. She probably thinks Mom was going to invite you, and Mom thinks Jessica did. We'll laugh about this later." I wanted to believe him. I desperately wanted to think that this was all a simple, ridiculous misunderstanding. My sister could be self-absorbed, and my mother could be oblivious, but surely they weren't cruel. Surely they wouldn't deliberately cut me out of such a significant family milestone. The thought was too painful to fully entertain, so I pushed it down and clung to Liam's explanation like a life raft. The day of the party arrived, a crisp Saturday in early autumn. The air was filled with the scent of falling leaves, a smell I usually loved but now found melancholic. By 5 p.m., my phone was silent. No last-minute call, no frantic text from Jessica saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, get over here right now." The silence was definitive. I was sitting on our lumpy sofa, still in the sweatpants I'd been wearing all day, when a decision began to form in my mind. It was a wild, desperate idea, born from a refusal to accept the truth. "We should go," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Liam looked up from his book. "Go where?" "To the party. What if the invitation really did get lost? What if they're there right now, wondering where we are? It's her engagement party, Liam. If we don't show up, they'll think we're the ones being rude." It'll just give them more ammunition to say we're not supportive. My logic was tangled, a pretzel of denial and hope, but I was committed to it. Liam's expression was full of doubt, his brow furrowed with concern. Clara, I don't know. If they wanted us there, they would have called by now. Please, I begged, the word catching in my throat. I just have to know. I can't sit here all night wondering. He saw the raw pain in my eyes and finally nodded, his reluctance giving way to his unwavering need to support me. We got ready in a strange, tense silence. I put on the one nice dress I owned, a simple navy blue sheath that felt hopelessly inadequate for a place called the Redwood Manor. I did my makeup carefully, as if a perfect application of mascara could somehow build a shield around my heart. Liam put on a suit, and as he adjusted his tie in our cracked hallway mirror, he looked at me and forced a smile. You look beautiful, he said. I knew he was trying to bolster my courage, and I loved him for it. The drive to the venue was 20 minutes of pure dread. The Redwood Manor was even more opulent than I had imagined. It was a sprawling stone estate surrounded by perfectly manicured gardens, with a long, winding driveway lit by elegant gas lamps. Valets in crisp uniforms were rushing to open doors of sleek black cars. As we pulled up in our sensible, slightly dented sedan, I felt a fresh wave of humiliation. We didn't belong here. We gave our car to the valet and walked towards the grand entrance. The sound of music and laughter spilled out from the tall, arched doorways. Through the large glass panels, I could see a crowd of beautifully dressed people mingling, holding champagne flutes that caught the light of the crystal chandeliers. I saw my mother, radiant in her silver gown, laughing with a group of people. I saw Jessica, looking like a princess in a white cocktail dress, her hand on Marcus's arm. They were all there, inside that warm, glittering bubble of celebration. And we were out here in the cold. There was a hostess stand just inside the entrance with two women checking a list on a tablet. My courage evaporated. I couldn't bring myself to walk up to them and find my name wasn't on the list. Not in front of all these people. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I'll just call Jessica, I mumbled to Liam, my fingers fumbling with the screen. She'll tell the host to let us in. I pressed the call button. It rang once, twice, and then went to voicemail. Hey, you've reached Jessica. Leave a message. Her voice was chipper, carefree. I hung up without saying anything. No answer, I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. She's busy, obviously. I sent a text next. Hey, we're outside. Let us know when you have a sec. I stared at the screen, watching the 3 pulsing dots of the typing indicator that never appeared. We stood there on the stone patio, just to the side of the main entrance, trying to look like we were waiting for someone. We watched as more guests arrived, greeted with warm hugs and ushered inside. A couple we vaguely knew from a family holiday party walked past us, gave a hesitant, confused smile, and disappeared through the doors. The cold was starting to seep through my thin dress. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Each second felt like an hour, stretching my nerves to their breaking point. Liam put his arm around my shoulders, a silent, solid presence. He didn't say, I told you so. He just stood with me in my self-inflicted purgatory. The invitation never arrived. The text was never answered. The doors remained closed to us. Finally, the fight went out of me, replaced by a cold, heavy certainty. I looked up at Liam, my eyes stinging with unshed tears. You were right, I whispered. Let's go home. He nodded, his own eyes dark with anger on my behalf. He led me back to the valet stand, and as we waited for our car, I couldn't resist one last look back at the glowing manor. Through the glass, I saw my sister throw her head back in laughter, completely unaware, or perhaps completely unconcerned, that her invisible sister had been standing just feet away, waiting for a welcome that would never come. The drive home was suffocatingly quiet. The silence in our small car was a living thing, thick with my humiliation and Liam's protective fury. I stared out the passenger window, watching the streetlights blur into watery streaks as unshed tears welled in my eyes. I refused to let them fall. Crying felt like a concession, an admission of how deeply this had wounded me, and my pride was the only armor I had left. When we got back to our apartment, I took off my dress, hung it back in the closet, and scrubbed the hopeful makeup off my face with a vengeance. I felt like a fool, a desperate, naive fool who had dressed up for her own public shaming. Liam tried to talk to me, to coax the pain out, but I couldn't find the words. He made me tea, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, and simply sat with me on the sofa as I stared at the blank TV screen. He knew that sometimes, the best comfort is just quiet solidarity. 2 days passed in a haze of wounded silence. I buried myself in work, writing code with a mechanical intensity that blocked out all thought. But the silence from my family was more damning than any argument could ever be. Not a single call or text from my mother or sister. No, where were you? Or, we missed you. It was confirmation that our absence hadn't been noticed because it had been engineered. They hadn't missed me be. Ekaz, they never expected me to be there in the first place. By Monday evening, the numbness began to wear off, replaced by a slow-burning anger. I needed to hear it from them. I needed to force them to say it, to strip away the plausible deniability and confront the ugly truth of their actions. I couldn't let them get away with this silent, dismissive cruelty. I found my phone and dialed my mother's number before I could lose my nerve. Liam, who was making dinner in our small kitchen, saw the look on my face and quietly turned off the stove, leaning against the counter to give me his silent support. My mother answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "Clara, hi honey, I was just thinking about you." The casual, unbothered warmth of her tone was like a slap in the face. "Were you?" I asked, my voice flat and cold. "You didn't seem to be thinking about me on Saturday night." There was a brief pause. The cheerfulness in her voice was replaced by a cautious, defensive tone. "Oh, the party, it was wonderful. Jessica was so happy. You should have seen the flowers, they were just spectacular." She was trying to deflect, to steer the conversation into safe, superficial territory. I wasn't going to let her. "I couldn't have seen them, Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "because I wasn't invited." "Don't be so dramatic, Clara," she sighed, the familiar sound of her exasperation already creeping in. "It wasn't that kind of party. It was a very specific event." "What kind of event doesn't include your daughter, your sister's own sister?" My grip on the phone tightened, my knuckles turning white. "Well, Marcus has a lot of very important business partners," she began, launching into the explanation she had clearly rehearsed. "And Jessica's company executives were there. It was a networking thing, really. Very high-powered. Jessica wanted to make a good impression. We're planning a more casual family barbecue for later in the spring. You'll of course be at that." Her words were so condescending, so dismissive of my intelligence. She was talking to me as if I were a child being told I couldn't have dessert before dinner. "So, what you're saying is, I wasn't important enough to be there. Liam and I weren't high-powered enough to make the cut." "That's not what I'm saying," she said, her voice rising in frustration. "You always twist things. It was just a different crowd. People on a certain level, it would have been awkward." "Awkward for who, Mom?" I pushed, the anger finally cracking the dam of my composure. "Awkward for me, or awkward for you and Jessica, who would have had to explain my little computer hobby to an investment banker." The line went quiet for a moment. I had hit the nerve. When she spoke again, her voice was stripped of all pretense, cold and sharp with a long-simmering resentment I had never fully understood until now. "You know, this is why she didn't want to invite you," she snapped. "You're so sensitive, you make everything about you." "She didn't want to invite me," I repeated, the words landing like physical blows. "So it was deliberate." "Jessica just wanted a party for the successful ones, honey," my mother said, and the casual cruelty of her words sucked the air from my lungs. "For people who have their lives together. She was worried you'd feel out of place. We were trying to protect you, if you just see it that way. For the successful ones." The phrase echoed in the sudden, ringing silence. It was the thesis statement for my entire life, the hidden caption beneath every family photo. There were the successful ones, and then there was me. I wasn't just on a different path, I was on a lesser one. My hard work, my passion, my partnership with the man I loved, none of it registered on their scale of achievement. It was all a childish game, and I hadn't earned a seat at the adult table yet. I think I was supposed to cry. I was supposed to get hysterical, to scream at her, to fulfill her prophecy of me being too sensitive. But I didn't. A strange, glacial calm settled over me. In that moment of absolute, brutal honesty, something inside me broke. It was the part of me that had spent 28 years desperately seeking their approval. "I see," I said, my voice empty of all emotion. "Thank you for being so honest. It's very clear now." "Clara, don't take it like this," she started, perhaps sensing she had gone too far. But I was already done. "I have to go," I said. "Goodbye, Mom." I ended the call and set the phone down on the table with a soft click. I looked up at Liam. His face was a mask of disbelief and rage. He had heard everything. He opened his mouth to speak, but I just shook my head. There was nothing left to say. The truth, in all its ugliness, was finally out in the open. I was not one of them. I was not a successful one. And in a strange, painful way, that realization was the beginning of my freedom. After that phone call, a PR. Awful silence fell between my family and me. It wasn't an angry silence, filled with slammed doors and heated, unsent text messages. It was a cold, still silence like the quiet that settles over a landscape after a devastating winter storm. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't post passive-aggressive quotes on social media. I simply stopped. I stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped initiating any form of contact. And in return, I received the same. It seemed my mother and sister were relieved. They had said their piece, defined my place in the family hierarchy, and were content to let me sit in the corner they had assigned me. The first few weeks were the hardest. My grief was a physical presence, a heavy weight in my chest. Every time my phone buzzed, a part of me would still hope it was an apology, a moment of remorse. It never was. The pain of my mother's words, "A party for the successful ones," played on a loop in my mind. It was a brutal assessment of my life, a final judgment from the two people whose opinions I had once valued above all others. During this time, Liam was my rock. He was my anchor in a storm of self-doubt. He watched as I picked at my food, as I stared into space for hours, as the light in my eyes grew dimmer. He never once said, "I told you so." He never pushed me to get over it. Instead, he was just there. He would wrap me in a hug when he saw the sadness wash over me, make me a cup of tea, and gently coax me out for a walk just to feel the sun on my face. One evening, about a month after the party, I was sitting on the floor of our living room, surrounded by business plans and financial projections that suddenly felt meaningless. "Maybe she's right," I whispered into the quiet of the room. "Maybe we're just playing. Maybe this is all a big waste of time, and I should just go get a real job and be a successful one." Liam slid down to the floor beside me, turning my face to look at him. His expression was serious, his gaze unwavering. "Don't you dare let them do this to you," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Don't you let their narrow-minded, pathetic definition of success poison what we're building. They measure life in job titles and bank statements. We measure it in creation, in passion, in building something that matters. Do not let them take that away from you, Clara. That's our superpower." His words cut through the fog of my despair. He was right. Their validation was a cage I had been rattling the bars of my whole life, and they had just handed me the key. Their rejection wasn't a verdict on my worth. It was a reflection of their own limitations. That night marked a turning point. The hurt didn't vanish, but it began to transmute into something else, fuel. A quiet, determined resolve settled deep in my bones. I wasn't going to work hard to prove them wrong. That still would have been playing their game. I was going to work hard for me, for Liam, for the dream we had poured our souls into. Their opinions no longer mattered. They had forfeited their right to have one. The silence from my family became a strange kind of gift. Without the constant pressure of their judgment, without the low-grade anxiety of the next family dinner, I felt a new sense of clarity and focus. All the energy I had spent trying to win their approval was now redirected into Connect Sphere. Liam and I entered a period of intense, almost monastic focus. We worked 18-hour days, our tiny apartment transformed into a high-octane command center. Whiteboards were filled and erased and filled again. We lived on coffee and protein bars, our conversations a rapid-fire shorthand of code, user feedback, and server logistics. We were chasing a deadline. A major tech conference was approaching, and we had been accepted to present ConnectSphere in the startup showcase. It was a long shot, but it was our shot. A chance to get our app in front of the investors and industry leaders who mattered, not the ones in my sister's social circle, but the ones who could actually understand and appreciate what we had built. During this time, we were completely broke. The seed funding was running out, and we were pouring every last cent into preparing for the conference. We ate pasta without sauce, watered down our coffee, and ignored the final demand notices piling up in our mailbox. It was terrifying, but it was also exhilarating. We were betting everything on ourselves. On the flight to the conference, I looked out the window at the clouds below and felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I was no longer the invisible sister, the family dreamer, the unsuccessful one. I was Clara, co-founder and chief architect of my own life. It didn't matter if my family ever saw that. It only mattered that I did. The sound of their silence had become the soundtrack to my liberation. It was the quiet space I needed to finally hear my own voice, and it was telling me that I was on the verge of something irredeemable. The tech conference was a whirlwind of noise, ambition, and caffeine. For 3 days, Liam and I operated on pure adrenaline. We stood at our small booth in the startup showcase, giving our pitch for ConnectSphere to anyone who would listen: journalists, developers, venture capitalists, and curious onlookers. We gave dozens of demos, our voices growing hoarse as we explained the architecture, the user interface, and the monetization strategy we had spent years perfecting. By the end of the second day, we were exhausted but hopeful. We had generated some buzz. A few tech blogs had mentioned us, and we had a stack of business cards from interested parties. The breakthrough came on the final morning. A woman with a calm, authoritative presence approached our booth. She introduced herself as an executive from one of the largest tech corporations in the world, a company so big, its name was practically synonymous with the internet itself. She didn't want a demo. She said she'd been watching us for 2 days and had her team do a deep dive on our app the night before. She wanted to talk about an acquisition. Liam and I exchanged a look of stunned disbelief. We led her to a quiet corner of the convention center, and for the next hour, she laid out a vision that was beyond our wildest dreams. Her company didn't just want to invest. They wanted to buy ConnectSphere outright and integrate its technology into their global platform. They saw the potential we had always seen, but on a scale we had never dared to imagine. The weeks that followed were a blur of lawyers, contracts, and high-stakes negotiations. We were flown to their headquarters, ushered into sleek boardrooms that overlooked a sprawling campus. We, the kids who had been coding in our cramped apartment, were now sitting across the table from some of the most powerful people in the tech industry. It was surreal, terrifying, and unbelievably exciting. Liam was a brilliant negotiator, calm and resolute, while I handled the technical due diligence, walking their top engineers through every line of our code. Finally, the day came. We sat in a lawyer's office, a stack of papers nearly a foot high in front of us. The final offer was on the table. The number had so many zeros, it looked like a typo. With a shared, trembling breath, Liam and I picked up our pens and signed our names. In that instant, our lives changed forever. The sale of ConnectSphere made us, overnight, multimillionaires. We walked out of the building and into the afternoon sun, feeling dazed. We didn't whoop or cheer. We just stood on the sidewalk, looking at each other in stunned silence. "Is this real?" I whispered, half expecting to wake up back in our apartment with the alarm blaring. Liam pulled me into a hug, lifting me off the ground. "It's real, Clara," he laughed, his voice thick with emotion. "We did it. We actually did it." We decided to keep the news to ourselves for a while. We needed time to process it, to let the reality of our new situation sink in. The first thing we did wasn't to buy a sports car or a yacht. It was to pay off our student loans and our parents' mortgages. A quiet, anonymous transfer that we never told anyone about. The second thing was to find a home. Our apartment, once a cozy haven of dreams, now felt suffocatingly small. We wanted a space that represented not just our financial success, but our new beginning. A place of peace, of security, of freedom from the cramped quarters of our past. We engaged a realtor and started looking at houses, and it felt like we were playing a part in a movie. We walked through beautiful homes, each one more incredible than the last. Then we found it. It wasn't just a house, it was a statement. Perched on a hill overlooking the city, it was a modern masterpiece of glass, steel, and stone. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the skyline like a living work of art. An infinity pool seemed to spill over the edge of the cliff. The inside was a vast expanse of open space, with clean lines, high ceilings, and a sense of profound tranquility. It was the physical embodiment of everything we had fought for: clarity, vision, and limitless possibility. When we walked into the enormous, empty living room, the late afternoon sun streamed through the glass walls, bathing the entire space in golden light. I stood in the center of the room, slowly turning in a circle, and for the first time since my mother's phone call, I felt an unshakable sense of my own worth. It had nothing to do with the money or the house itself. It was the knowledge that we had built this. Our minds, our hands, our relentless belief in each other. This was real success. We made an offer that day, and it was accepted. A week later, we stood in that same empty living room, but this time, the keys were in my hand. They felt cool and heavy, a tangible symbol of our journey. Liam came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist, resting his in on my shoulder as we looked out at the city lights beginning to twinkle below. "What do you think?" he murmured into my ear. "A little bigger than the old place, huh?" I laughed, a real, unburdened laugh that echoed in the vast space. "Just a little," I said. "Welcome home." This wasn't just a new house. It was a new world. A world we had built ourselves, far away from the shadows of my past and the suffocating judgment of my family. Here, we weren't defined by anyone's expectations but our own. Here, we were finally free. Our moving day was chaotic, exhilarating, and completely surreal. Instead of a rusty U-Haul, a professional moving company with a fleet of clean white trucks handled our few possessions, which looked almost comical when placed in the cavernous rooms of the new house. Our old lumpy sofa, the desk we had both huddled over for years, our mismatched dishes, they were like humble artifacts from a past life. We had invited a few of our closest friends, the ones who had supported us through the ramen years, to help us unpack and celebrate. The atmosphere was one of pure joy. Music was blasting through a portable speaker, echoing off the bare walls. Pizza boxes were stacked on the enormous marble island in the kitchen. We were all laughing, giddy with the sheer absurdity and wonder of it all. Our friends were in awe of the house, wandering from room to room with wide eyes. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, orange glow through the massive windows, Liam grabbed my hand. "Come on," he said, a mischievous glint in his eye. "We haven't done this officially yet." He led me outside to the front porch. The movers had finished, and our friends were inside, opening another bottle of champagne. He looked at me, his face full of so much love it made my heart ache. "For all the thresholds we've already crossed, and for all the ones to come," he said softly. Then he scooped me up into his arms, bridal style, just as he had when we moved into our first tiny apartment as a married couple. I shrieked with laughter, wrapping my arms around his neck. As he carried me across the threshold into our new life, one of our friends, a budding filmmaker named Sarah, caught the moment on her phone. It was completely unplanned. The video was shaky, the sound filled with my laughter and Liam's triumphant grunt, but the light was perfect. The golden hour sun streamed in behind us, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air and casting us in a cinematic glow. In the background, the breathtaking view of the city was visible through the open door. It was a perfect, genuine 30-second clip of pure happiness. That evening, Sarah posted the video to her social media account. She was incredibly proud of us and wanted to share our success story. She wrote a simple caption: "This is what years of grinding, dreaming, and believing in each other looks like. My best friends, Clara and Liam, officially home. Couldn't be prouder." She tagged us both and added a few hashtags, including relationship goals and dream house. We thought nothing of it. We were too busy drinking champagne out of plastic cups and planning where to put our old sofa. But the internet had other plans. The video exploded. First, it was just our friends and family liking and commenting. But then their friends shared it. And their friends, someone with a massive following on a popular, inspiration-focused account, reposted it. From there, it went parabolic. By the next morning, it had 1 million views. By the end of the day, it was at 10 million. Our story, stripped down to its most romantic essentials, was irresistible. The hardworking young couple, the fairy tale gesture, the stunning house as a symbol of their success. It was a viral cocktail of hope, romance, and aspiration. News outlets and content aggregators picked it up. Articles started appearing online with headlines like, "Couple's dream home entrance will make you believe in love again," and "Who are the viral mansion couple?" The story behind the video. Our names were everywhere. And because the internet is a vast and interconnected place, it didn't take long for the news to reach my family. The first contact was a text message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. "Is this you? I saw this on my news feed. Your house is insane. Congrats." Then came an email from an aunt, then a call from an uncle. The extended family, who had never shown much interest in my little hobby, were suddenly falling all over themselves to congratulate me. It was bewildering. And then the call I had been subconsciously dreading and expecting arrived. It was Jessica. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text message appeared. "Clara, call me back immediately. I'm seeing this video everywhere. What is going on?" Before I could even process her message, my phone rang again. This time it was my mother. I stared at her name on the screen, a cold knot forming in my stomach. I let it go too. Voicemail as well. Her text followed moments later. "Clara Elizabeth, your sister and I are very confused. People are calling me asking about your new house. You need to call us and explain what happened." Liam came over and wrapped his arms around me, reading the messages over my shoulder. "So, the silence is broken," he said grimly. The tone of their messages was not one of happiness for me. It was one of shock, confusion, and, underneath it all, a frantic, proprietary urgency. It wasn't "congratulations." It was "explain yourself." They had been perfectly content to leave me in the dark, but the moment my life was illuminated by a viral spotlight, they were demanding to be let back in. Over the next few hours, the messages became more insistent. Jessica sent a barrage of texts. "Is this about that app thing? Did you sell it? Why didn't you tell us? Marcus is asking 1 million questions. A mansion, Clara? Seriously." My mother's texts were more emotionally manipulative. "I'm your mother. I can't believe I had to find this out from a stranger on the internet. I'm so hurt. We need to see the house. We need to talk. This is family business." They wanted an invitation. After curating a guest list of successful ones and leaving me off it, they were now demanding entry into my life because my success was suddenly, undeniably visible. The irony was so thick, I could have choked on it. I looked at Liam, the chaos of the outside world momentarily silenced by the peace of our new home. The confrontation I had never asked for was now inevitable. But this time, it would be on my terms. The digital onslaught from my mother and sister continued for 2 full days. It was a relentless campaign of calls, texts, and voicemails that swung wildly in tone from feigned concern to outright indignation. They were acting as if I had committed a great betrayal by becoming successful without their knowledge or permission. Their messages were filled with phrases like, "We deserve an explanation," and "How could you keep this from your family?" It was a masterclass in gaslighting, an attempt to reframe my private success as a personal slight against them. I let them spin. For 48 hours, I didn't answer a single call or reply to a single text. I needed that time to untangle the knot of emotions inside me, the lingering hurt, the flicker of vindictive satisfaction, and, most importantly, the clear, calm resolve that had been solidifying within me for months. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about self-preservation. It was about protecting the peace that Liam and I had worked so hard to build. Liam was my sounding board through it all. We sat on the deck by our new pool one evening, the city lights glittering below like a carpet of fallen stars, and I read some of the messages aloud. "Jessica wants to throw us a housewarming party," I said, my voice dripping with disbelief as I read from my phone. "It will be the perfect way to celebrate everything. My engagement, your new house, all of it together as a family. I can have my caterer handle everything. We can even do a rerun of my engagement party for you since you missed it." Liam actually choked on his water. "A rerun? The audacity it's breathtaking." "She's not offering to celebrate me," I said, the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. "She's trying to absorb my success. If she throws the party here, then my house becomes a backdrop for her life. My story becomes part of her story. It's a takeover." He nodded, his expression serious. "They can't stand that you did this without them, that you wrote a narrative they weren't in control of. Now they're trying to edit themselves back into the main storyline." He was right. Their sudden, desperate need to be involved wasn't about love or pride. It was about control. My quiet, underestimated life had been comfortable for them. My sudden, loud success was a threat to the family hierarchy they had so carefully constructed. Finally, I decided I was ready to talk. I couldn't let this drag on forever. I sent a short, simple text to both my mother and my sister. "I can talk tomorrow morning at 10. I will call you both." I made it a conference call. I wanted them in the same conversation so they couldn't twist the narrative to each other later. The next morning, I sat at the marble island in my sun-drenched kitchen, a mug of coffee in my hands. Liam stood nearby, out of sight but present, his hand resting reassuringly on my shoulder. I took a deep breath and dialed. "Clara, finally." My mother's voice burst through the speaker, tight with anxiety. "Clara, what is going on?" Jessica chimed in, foregoing any greeting. I remained calm. My voice was steady and even devoid of the emotional hysterics they were so used to from me. "I'm calling to address your messages," I began. "Yes, Liam and I sold our company. Yes, we bought a new house. We've been very fortunate." "Fortunate, Clara, this is more." "Than fortunate, this is a mansion," Jessica exclaimed. "Why on earth would you hide this from us? We're your family." This was the moment, the opening I needed. "I didn't hide it, Jessica," I said calmly. "I just didn't share it with you. There's a difference. We were busy. And to be honest, I didn't think you'd be interested." "Not interested," my mother scoffed. "Of course we would be interested. This is wonderful news." "Is it?" I asked, and the genuine curiosity in my voice silenced them for a second. "Because the last time we spoke, Mom, you made it very clear what you and Jessica think of my life and my career. You told me, and I quote, that Jessica's engagement party was for the successful ones. You said you were trying to protect me from feeling out of place. Why would I turn around and invite you into a home that is the biggest symbol of a success you never thought I was capable of? Did you think I would suddenly forget the things you said?" A stunned silence filled the line. I could picture them perfectly, my mother sinking into a chair, my sister standing with her arms crossed, their faces masks of shock. They had expected tears or anger. They had not expected cold, hard memory. Jessica was the first to recover, her voice taking on a defensive, wheedling tone. "Oh, come on, Clara. That was just a misunderstanding. Mom didn't mean it like that." "She meant exactly what she said," I countered, my voice still unwavering. "And so did you by not inviting me. You both made a judgment about my worth. You decided I didn't belong. And you know what? You taught me a very important lesson. You taught me to stop trying to get an invitation to a party where I'm not wanted and to build my own house instead. So that's what I did." I let the words hang in the air. This was the core of it. This was the truth. "So, no," I continued, "I won't be hosting a party for you, Jessica. And Mom, we won't be having you over for a tour just yet. My home is my sanctuary. It's a place for people who have loved and supported me unconditionally. It's for the people who believed in me when I was eating instant ramen in a tiny apartment, not just for the ones who showed up after they saw a viral video. I could hear my mother start to cry softly. "Clara, that's a horrible thing to say. I'm your mother." "And I'm your daughter," I replied, a lifetime of hurt in those simple words. "The daughter you deemed unsuccessful. My success doesn't change who I am, but your reaction to my lack of it revealed exactly who you are. I need space. I need time. Maybe one day things can be different, but for now, this is how it has to be." I ended the conversation there. I didn't need to hear their excuses or their justifications. I had said what I needed to say. I clicked end call, and a profound sense of quiet settled over the room. It was over. I looked up at Liam, and he pulled me into his arms. I buried my face in his chest, not crying, but breathing. For the first time, I felt the full, unburdened weight of my own life, free from the crushing gravity of their expectations. Outside, the California sun was bright. The pool glittered. Our home was quiet. And for the first time, I understood that an invitation you have to beg for is never worth accepting. My real celebration was right here, in the life I had built, with the person who had been by my side all along. I was finally, truly home.